don't know what happened. My phone like shut down basically. My phone stopped working. And it ended. It automatically ended the stream. So I've hopped back on in case everyone else is like looking for me to restart the stream. Okay. We got one person here. Yeah, so because I can stay for a little bit to do some questions. But I know I didn't even get to the point. I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll just do like a community post to finish up. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna finish my point, so that this is actually kind of so people can jump to this for on the replay. But I'll finish up my point. It'll take about 5 minutes so that people can get back for the live, and then I'll do questions. I'll do like a half an hour of questions. Well, the kittens were chewing on the cord, and you can't be in here because you don't have a shirt on. Okay.
I know.
Okay. Okay. So I'm sorry. I don't know my phone. I don't know what it was doing, but it turned off on me. Okay, so the point that I wanted to make is that, I'm focusing on wanting to have like one focal per month, but it's a good idea to hedge your bets. And, this year, what I was kind of talking about a bunch was the fact that I had my annuals is what messed up, right? So there's all these cold hardy annuals that I plant in the spring that are available for me late spring, early summer for cuts. Then I have all these heat loving annuals like zinnias and cosmos and marigolds and celosia that are then available for me in the summer. And they're amazing because they're quick and they're fast and they're easy and they're cheap. I like everyone should grow zinnias. They're a great cut flower. These cold hardy annuals are just incredible, right? Like the looks of the flowers that you can get, the options, the time that they bloom at, they're just really incredible for on the farm. But if I only had annuals this year, I wouldn't have anything, because over the years I've diversified into perennials because I've been slowly investing into these perennials. They've kind of been there to save my butt this year. Every single thing that I'm using in the bouquets right now are perennials, right? Like the greeneries that I'm using are like raspberries. They're perennial herbs. The feverfew that I'm cutting, the rudbeckia that I'm going to be cutting, they're not the annual planted ones. They're my ones that have survived the winter. They're my perennial ones. The yarrow isn't first year yarrow. First year yarrow, you can get it to bloom, but it's going to bloom in the summer. These lilies. Lilies you can grow as an annual by planting them out, but this year I was so swamped. I don't know that I would have been able to plant out the lilies in time. I might have been so caught up and so busy that I wouldn't have been able to do it. Because of this work that I've kind of put into the farm in the past, and perennials don't always make sense, right? A lot of people like to say that perennials are less work, but one of the problems with perennials is they're really difficult to do weed management on them, because you never lift them out of the ground and you never, are there being able to till up the soil. They're very prone to having aggressive perennial weeds in them. And then most of them kind of like, bloom like what I'm saying with the lilies, right? They bloom for 2.5 weeks, but you have to take care of them all year. Whereas, like a lily that's grown as an annual, you put it in the ground, and 75 days later, you're pulling it out of the ground and you plant something else in the space. So there are sacrifices to growing the perennials that make it so the annuals look a lot more desirable. But if I hadn't have been diversified this year, I would have nothing. So it's been a good learning lesson for me, that I need to, in order to limp through really bad times, I need to have some things available. Like I need to. It's okay. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. So there's this concept like the 80-20. 80% of your profit comes from 20% of your products. And when people kind of talk about it, what they mean is that you should really you should focus in on, if there's something that you do that makes the majority of your money, you should focus in on that, because that is potentially a path to the most success. And like I do think that way, right? Like the crops have to be profitable. The crops have to be, they have to be profitable, or else I can't grow them, right? I can't grow for a loss. So everything on the farm has to be able to make me money. But maybe there's space for those products that don't bring in 80% of your of your income, to protect you and to buffer you from the years when that 80% has some sort of catastrophic failure. It means that even though it's only 20% of your sales, if it means that you have something to sell for a month, when you wouldn't have had nothing, it can actually be very make or break. So like, I'm sharing the story not because I'm saying that everyone should plant 1,000 lilies in their farm. I'm just sharing the story because I think it's good to look at things in like a multi-year window, right? Because it's you never know what you're going to run into. So over the last 2 years, this specific problem hasn't been anything I've had to encounter, but I'm going to feel more resilient and more prepared to encounter something like this again, because I'm going to keep it in my crop planning that this could happen. So that's the moral of the story. I don't know how many people are going to get to it because it's in the separate video. But it looks like we have some people here now. So I'll do questions. I'm just going to scroll through. The best way for questions is if you guys put it in capitals. It's just easier for me to spot it. He's in the room with one of the kittens, but I think he... are you leaning more towards annuals because they're more color for longer? So I feel I kind of answered that a little bit in what I was talking about there. Annuals are really great because they're really simple. What I'm leaning... Okay, Ian's bringing these kittens back. Oh, gotta kiss these kittens. It's fine. So at this point, I'm leaning more towards not necessarily annuals, but I'm leaning more towards crops, right? Like, okay, this is gonna be like a little niche. This is going to be the answer that you didn't think you needed. You didn't think. This is the answer to the question you didn't think you asked when you asked me that. It's going to take me like it's going to be a multi-minute question. Okay, but that means that you guys can get some other questions up there. Okay, so the thing that I realized last year. So last year we had very poor work-life balance. We were just really, really busy. We were spending like, all of our time working on the farm. The farm was being a lot more successful in the sales than we anticipated. And so it was kind of like just drop what you're doing and go and make the bouquets, because the bouquets are going to make us the money. Farm maintenance kind of like went out the window. We were just like, pick the flowers, make the bouquets, sell the bouquets. And any spare time that we had, we were working on the YouTube videos. And so we were working a lot more than what we had hoped to be working by year 4 on the farm. So this year the plan was to be more focused, more streamlined. And one of the ways, right, because I want to make the most amount of money. So obviously I didn't want to be more streamlined by growing less and selling less. I wanted to be more streamlined by growing more and selling more, but growing things that were going to be lower labor. And keeping in mind what was, instead of keeping in mind how much each flower potentially made me, instead to keep in mind the dollars per hour I could produce. Because last year I realized, it didn't matter that, I could harvest 1,000 zinnias off of a bed, and people love zinnias, and I could sell lots of zinnias. If it was going to take me 8 hours to harvest and prep 1,000 zinnias, then maybe I'm better off to, instead be harvesting 600 of something that only takes me 3 hours. So I started looking at the farm in a new way. Before, with the vegetables, we really needed to maximize our space. The goal for the farm is we want to make $100,000 gross a year. We want to do 100,000 in sales every year. And so with the veggies, our way of doing that was we were going to develop the farm to be 100 beds. That was the entire farm. I think at this point, with just the main farm section, I think there's 60 beds. But we have the other side that we're finishing on developing. So 100 beds in total, and if we grew $1,000 per bed and we sold everything, then $100,000. So when you move into veggies, the dollar per bed that you can produce with veggie or with flowers versus veggies is a lot higher. It's really easy to get $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 per bed in production. A good example is, even sunflowers. Sunflowers are a great example. So sunflowers, 60 days. Sorry, I'm just distracted by the comments. I am going to get to these other comments or other questions. So sunflowers, I fit 400 sunflowers per bed. I usually retail the sunflowers for $250, and they produce in 60 days. So, when a bed of sunflowers is $1,000, and then, I could grow 3 of them, right? And sunflowers are a really simple crop. The zinnias, right? The zinnias, they fit 400 zinnias per bed. And it's easy to imagine selling zinnias for $1 a pop. And it's easy to imagine getting 400 zinnias out of a bed in a week, and for zinnias to, produce that strong for a few weeks, and then to also like continue, if you wanted to keep the bed going and not flip it. So yeah, so like you can get a lot of dollars per square foot with flowers. The problem of flowers over veggies is they also take a lot more time. So what would make you $1,000? Classic veggie bed was the same spacing for lettuce as it was for sunflowers, and the same price, right? $250 a head for lettuce. I can grow 400 heads per bed, and they're a 60-day crop, right? So lettuce was, that's $1,000. And the amount of time that it would take to pick and to wash 400 heads of lettuce is pretty comparable to the amount of time it would take to pick, strip, and then process into bouquets the sunflowers. But it's a little bit easier to sell 400 sunflowers because you bunch them into eights, so then you only have to find 50 customers for the 400 sunflowers versus finding 400 customers for the heads of lettuce. So that is part of the reason why we went towards the flowers. We just found we were having a hard time getting enough of a customer base to sell the veggies to be able to achieve our sales numbers. Okay, I'm rambling. I'm like hot, so it's making me distracted. I'm a middle-aged woman. I get hot, and then I get grumpy with my kids, and I also I start to get unfocused. Okay. I do have a point to this though. So because I can produce so many dollars per square foot doing flowers, before my focus on flowers was always getting the most to produce in the smallest amount of space. Because prior to this, we only accommodated flowers 2,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet of the farm. We weren't, it was kind of okay, there's 10 beds of flowers in our 100-bed farm. So we wanted to make sure that we were maximizing what was in those 10 beds. But now, because I have 100 beds, if I tried to grow what I was growing in those 10 beds before, then I'd be growing 10 times as much, and I definitely don't need 10 times as much because I wouldn't be able to sell 10 times as much. So I'd just be making work for myself that wouldn't translate into money. So last year, what I did is I started to rethink how I think about the beds and kind of to shift back to that veggie idea of they don't have to make me $4,000 per bed. They can make me $1,000 per bed. I have 100 beds. That will be my $100,000. Rather than, being worried about getting the most possible. I'm not currently selling $100,000. Let's just focus on doing what we're doing. And so if I wanted to grow flowers, 100 beds of flowers, then I need to find flowers that are as simple to grow as the veggies were, right? Because I need to bring down the labor hours because I'm not bringing the sales up enough to pay for more labor hours to go in. So as I was making the bouquets, I was realizing there was a lot of bouquets that I was making that were taking me a long time. So there's some bouquets that go together really fast, right? And a great example of that is the tulips. Tulips are one of the fastest bouquets to go together. The reason is because the tulips have a high dollar per stem price, right? So to put together 10 stems, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, boom, it's done, right? But if I'm using stuff that's $1 a stem, because I'm doing these $18 bouquets, putting together 18 stems takes twice as much work as putting together, the 10 stems. And then there's also there's stuff that when you just, like the tulips, right? Like boom, you put it together, it looks amazing. But there's other stuff that only looks good if you like fuss and primp with it. There's a bunch of things that I've grown over the years that aren't necessarily the easiest things to use in bouquets, like zinnias, right? Like zinnias, they look amazing. They're this great disc, but they're delicate. You can't just like throw them down on the table like the tulips. There's a reason why you don't see zinnias in the grocery store. um, there's a reason why they're kind of more this specialty local flower stem. So I started to be like, hey, what are some of these things that are more of a spray style flower? Because when I was using the Lysianthus last summer, I was like, whoa, when I put these together, these go together really fast. Because I'd take a single stem of Lysianthus and it had a cluster of flowers on it. And, it was worth $3.50. That's what I was pricing the Lysianthus stems at. And they were a deal at $3.50. But, even if I wanted to price it at $5, I put it into the bouquet and it looks like $5, where there's a lot of other things like, so yarrow, I kind of price it like $1 a stem. And if I took €5 and I put it down on the table and then I put a single stem of Lysianthus and I was like, $5, which one do you want? People are going to grab the Lysianthus every time. So in my farm planning, I'm thinking this is now the answer to the question. The question was like annuals or perennials, what am I focusing more on? So in my farm planning at this point, what I'm focusing more on is things that harvest quickly, things that look very full on like a single stem, right? Because and this is part of like the harvest quickly. The amount of time that it takes me to process a single stem of yarrow, because I have to cut it and then strip the leaves off, get it in my hand. I have to handle it in the bouquet, and then it's priced at $1. The amount of time that it's the exact same amount of time that it takes me to do a sunflower. I have to cut the sunflower, strip the leaves off, handle it into the bouquet. Sunflower's $2.50, right? Or if it's a lily, same amount of work. I have to cut it, I have to strip the leaves off, put it into a bouquet, but the lily's $5, right? So every time I lean more towards the $5 per stem item that looks full and beautiful and valuable to my customers instead of the $1 per stem item like the yarrow or zinnias. Zinnias are the one that, I've been like, do zinnias make sense? The more I focus on that, the less stem, the more efficient my work is. The less stems that I handle in the bouquets, the more number of bouquets that I can produce per hour, the less number of stems that I need to pick to produce those bouquets means the less amount of time that I need to spend in the field. And if to do that, it means that my beds are going to now produce only $1,000 per bed. The sunflowers. The sunflowers are a perfect example. That bed, it's $1,000, right? The zinnias, I can get a few thousand, but the sunflowers are the amount of work it's going to take for me to make 50 bouquets, to harvest 400 stems, to make that $1,000. It's a lot more efficient, and it's a lot more, the more I think like that on the farm, the more I'll be able to increase my volume without having to increase my labor costs, which means that I'll be able to hopefully keep doing this. Because it has to work out. You have to make sure that you're getting paid. So all those steps have to make sense. So that is what I'm focusing on, right? It can be a perennial that does that. And like I was saying, like before about how the perennials don't always make sense over the annuals, because the perennials actually take a lot of labor to maintain, when you're only picking them for, a few weeks out of the year, but you have to maintain that bed 365 days a year. um they maybe make sense if it means that I can have quick and easy bouquets for the labor, right? Because if I can get systems in place to make the maintaining easier, then it doesn't matter that I have to maintain it 365 days a year, right? If I only have to spend a few minutes a week, then that's fine because it'll save me so much time on the harvesting. If I focus in on that in a perennial, and then if I can focus in on that on an annual, like even better, right? So that's why there's some things on the farm that we're investing into that I maybe would have never done in the past, right? So like phlox, we have perennial phlox, and that's like a great example. It's going to make this big puff ball. It's going to be really decadent in a bouquet. We're like the Lysianthus. I mean, the Lysianthus is such a great example, right? And they're expensive, right? They take a long. You have to buy them as these plugs. The plugs, cost a lot of money to bring in. But if I can, grow like this thing that is, I can fill up my bouquets super quick and super easy with, then they make a lot of sense for me. They actually become cheaper for me. Lysianthus becomes cheaper for me, even though it's an expensive high-end flower, than maybe zinnias are. And if for my customers, I'll always have some zinnias, but having a Lysianthus bouquet, like I feel like customers would choose Lysianthus over zinnias. And every time they do that, it's maybe actually better for me. Okay, but I could talk about that all day. I know you guys have some questions here, right? Because that's like my whole thing. I'm like, I need to figure out how to do this more efficiently. I need to always be improving the efficiency so that I can like make this work, right? Because that's how you make it work. You need to just always be looking for how to do it better. You need to be honest with yourself about labor. You need to be honest with yourself about how slow or how fast you are, right? If you're slow at bouquets, then you need to make sure that what you're doing with your bouquets is going to pay you for your time, or you need to figure out how to do it faster. Okay, are you leaning towards plugs? So we did some plug experimenting this year. So Lysianthus, yeah, 100%. We're always like, we're doing that. So snapdragons, I was like, I have a pretty good system for snapdragons, so I don't know that I'd do snapdragons again. The stock I was also kind of about, because a bunch of them broke in shipping, and like fair enough, that was that wasn't their fault. It's like that was one of my boxes had shipping issues. But stock it's not that difficult. So I'm kind of 50-50. It made sense to buy stock as plugs, even with them breaking. But I also could just figure out how to grow stock. It's like of the kale family. I can grow kale. So if I can grow kale, I can eventually grow stock. But there definitely is some things that it's like we got some status, and I was like, oh yeah, we should totally like get status. But we actually ordered more status than what showed up, and like they were like, oh, some of our status didn't work out, so you're not getting status. So I'm like, maybe it would work to like hedge our bets, like start a little, but also buy in some, and then if we I can grow some sad status, and then if my beautiful bot plugs get canceled, then I can plant out my sad status. And if our beautiful bot status plugs come in, then I can just throw my sad status in the garbage. There's other stuff that it's like, well, maybe it would make sense to buy it and pot it up and sell it, right? Because of like doing the tomatoes. And I'm not saying tomatoes, because tomatoes, any veggie is so easy to grow. But things like the status, seeing how nice they come as the plug and how much time it saves us for cost. You know, I'm like, we're definitely gonna buy more plugs than we bought this year, next year. Or we're gonna buy more for ourselves. I don't know that, like, I don't think we're buying for everyone else next year. Um, but I'm still not gonna buy everything as plugs. And part of that is that shipping's just super expensive. If I had like if I lived beside if I was an hour away from the Ball Tagawa warehouse, I wouldn't grow anything myself. I would buy it all and I'd just go pick it up, be like, thanks. But because of the fact I have to ship everything, it doubles the price for any plugs. So it means that, I'm gonna mostly stick to things that are tricky to grow. But like flowers are hard. Flowers are so hard to grow. I'm not great at growing flowers. And I veggies are very forgiving. So I can grow veggie seedlings, but I definitely am not highly skilled at growing flower seedlings yet. And so I want to improve my skill set because I do see us potentially one day moving into a paper pot system. Um, on our vacation, we visited a friend of ours in Washington, and they do these like walk behind mechanical cultivating tractors. So basically, like you'll see in the video. We have a video for a farm tour that I'll share with you guys. But it's fascinated me and Ian from like day one. It's a really great weed management system. But we need to change how our farm is set up. And so I'm not ready to change how the farm is set up yet. But I could imagine us changing. Oh, he's cute. As soon as you pick them up, they're purring. So it's like just like kitten purrs. Yeah, so I could see us in the future potentially moving towards this system, which means we'd have to change the way we plant things. But if we were to go into the system, which is basically instead of doing beds, you have rows, and like they often do 15-inch spacing, which would work quite well for a lot of the flowers. It's a lot more generous spacing than what I currently do. And like you want to torture flowers, you want to like stress them out, not give them space so they get nice and tall and leggy, because then they work good for the bouquets. But I
found this dropped on
oh, okay. Well, thank you for finding it, Sam. But in that system, it would make a lot of sense to invest into the paper pot transplanter, to save us time on our transplanting. Okay, you guys, thank you. But we can't invest into the paper pot transplanter yet because I don't grow good enough seedlings. To do the paper pot transplanter, you have to have really good success on your seedlings. You have to grow nice, strong, healthy seedlings. So to answer, am I going to buy all my plugs? No. And part of the reason why is that I need to learn to grow better seedlings. I think it's going to be an important skill for the farm for the ongoing future. I think that, like I said, I'm looking for ways to save labor. Okay, you guys, can you both get out of here, please? Yeah, I'm looking for ways to save labor, and buying in plugs is a good way to do that. But I also said part of what you need to do to make the farm work is to learn how to do things better. And so seedlings is definitely one of those things where I need to build my skill on it, and I recognize that. Did your eucalyptus come back? No. This past winter was a really, really bad winter. We lost more plants this last winter than ever ever in living in Kelowna. I'd say hardest winter in 10 years. And with how bad the winter was this year, I'm kind of a mind that I don't really want to grow anything that isn't zone 4, perennial wise. Just because okay, both of you into bed. I'll be up soon. I'm just gonna finish these questions. Because
I am this pretty
Okay, can you please not make a mess in here because I have to finish cleaning this, okay?
But I have pretty pink.
Yeah, so the eucalyptus died, but it's not surprising because I had stuff that died this last year that was like
Wait a minute, is
like
Grandma?
really shouldn't die. And the year before when the eucalyptus did overwinter, it was a crazy warm winter. And it's not that it was warm. The problem with Kelowna winters is we don't get any snow. So
We get snow.
Okay, Leah, I need you to leave now, please. Okay? I need both of you to leave, please. Go get Daddy.
Daddy's outside.
We'll go get him outside then. Okay, you're bumping my phone and you're being disruptive to me, okay? Yeah, the problem with the Kelowna winters isn't how cold it gets. The problem is we don't get any snow. So without having snow on the ground to insulate the ground, the temperatures that we do get freezes the ground deeper than it would normally freeze other places because other places normally have snow on the ground to insulate the ground. So because of that, I think we just need to be really careful about what we plan to overwinter. Can you put a couple 5-tier shelving units in the cooler to maximize your space, especially when making all those bouquets and having all those harvest buckets? So the cooler isn't tall enough to fit the 5-shelf rack in there. And then the other problem with the 5-shelf rack is it doesn't fit flowers in it. The cooler is tall enough that we could have like a double. We could have like a shelf to put. We could put things 2 levels high.
Mommy, I feel like nobody wants to
so having things be 2 shelves high isn't necessarily 100% useful in the cooler because we need to be able to get into the no, you can never do that. Okay, I will get it out and you can bring it, but you can never do that, please. Okay? I need you out of here, okay? It's like climbing a shelf. Yeah, so having the entire cooler be 2 shelves high doesn't help me because then I wouldn't be able to go inside the cooler to put things onto those shelves. So I could put along one of the side walls. I could have a shelf on either of the side walls, which would then allow me to fit a few more buckets in. But the problem, yeah, the tulips. The tulips was like, whoa. They're like, whoa, so many tulips. Oh my god, this cooler. The cooler has like more than enough space. So the goal is to do $4,000 a week. We have 25 weeks we have 25 productive weeks a year. If we do $4,000 a week, that's our $100,000. The cooler has more than enough space to fit $4,000 worth of stems. It has more than enough space to even fit them after they're turned into bouquets. The cooler doesn't have enough space to fit $10,000 into it. And so if the farm was to scale larger, which it definitely could, right? Like we're planting 1,000 peonies. If they produce 10 stems each and they all come on at the same time, we need cold storage for 10,000 peony stems, and peonies are even bigger than tulips. So if we can't fit 10,000 tulips in the cooler, then we definitely can't fit 10,000 peonies in the cooler, which means that we need more cooler space. But ideally, in the long run, what I would like to do is I would like to build out the room that currently has all the dried flowers in it. I would like to turn that into a walk-in cooler eventually. And I would like it to have a garage door on it, because eventually I would like us to have a tractor, and eventually I would like us to be able to have pallets of flowers that we can move around with forks on our tractor, and things like that. So I could see the scale of things changing in the future. But the cooler does a pretty good job. Yeah. Plus we have that weirdo. We have the box that we can make. Question if it's not too personal. How are you doing now with breathing issues you were having? Yeah. So what, like, was that last year or the year before when I had the health stuff? So okay. So I still have no idea what was wrong with me. It's like they checked like everything and they couldn't find anything. What I think it is now, in hindsight, is that I'm a 40-year-old woman, and so I'm starting to have like menopause symptoms, and so I think I was having like digestive issues that are like menopause related, but because like in hindsight, anytime like because I'd have the issues and then it would get kind of better and then they'd like come back. And I noticed that there was a connection between like that and like my cycle being like different from what it's been my entire life. So like I think that, and it was like, because so it started out as being breathing issues, and then it was like, well, maybe is there heart issues that all got explored, and then it was like they explored all these digestive issues. I was on all of these like anti-acid medications, and they were testing me for like different funguses and different like things that could have been issues from that. And they couldn't find anything, and I did this like insanely restrictive diet where I was eating like boiled fish and potatoes, and nothing else. And then I started to reintroduce all these like acidic food things that like normally would cause issues, for like acid, like stomach acid issues, and I wasn't having any issues with them at all. And the only thing I could identify was like that oily, like greasy food and oils and things like that caused issues for me. But like early on, they'd like tested my gallbladder, so I don't know. I'm like I'm now avoiding like eating too much greasy food and like and feeling fine. In So we had one video where like the first video where I went to the hospital. And so when that happened, I was like crawling around on the greenhouse, like on my hands and knees, like harvesting like things low down. It was like super hot and I was probably dehydrated. And I was doing like the like picking with one hand. So all my pressure was kind of like on like one arm. And I'd been doing a lot of heavy lifting that year. And then I was like, when I got out of the greenhouse, I felt like really bad. And it felt like I had a belt around my chest. It felt like something squeezing on my chest. And I thought I was just dehydrated. So I like tried to cool down and drink a bunch of water. And then it still felt like that. So I went to the hospital because that's like scary heart stuff. But there was no heart things for that. And one of the subscribers was like, oh, there's like, you can get like an inflammation of like the cartilage of your like rib cage. And and all the symptoms looked really similar to that. And I did a few like stretching exercises that involved like laying down and like stretching out and putting your arms out, and it always like made me feel a lot better. And it took like 2 or 3 weeks. Like I stopped doing heavy lifts and I started to be like more careful about like putting strain on my chest. And after a few weeks, like the tightness in the chest like released. And then from now on, my new rule is to like try to keep my lifts to 30 pounds, not to do like the 50-pound lifts regularly. Kind of keep all the weights to like 30 pounds. Pick one bucket instead of one per each hand. Try to like hold things closer to my chest for lifting. And I've never had that same type of pain. So I think that, what was kind of originally diagnosed as like breathing issues was this kind of like I'd done some sort of chest injury to myself, and then it spiraled into all these other things. But that's kind of the story. I'm fine now. You know, it's probably good for me to not eat. You know, my all we ate was greens covered in oil and salt and pepper. So like, you know, it was like, oh, I eat salad drenched in salad dressing, and I cook up onions, and like I cook them in oil, and bok choy drenched in sesame oil. You know, so, you know, my diet was very much like green things and oil. So it's probably not a bad idea that I've changed up my diet. Okay, the roadside stand garden bed looks fabulous. Maybe put a hand-painted red roof farm stand with an arrow right on the fence above the garden. So I have my logo painted on the fence. It's painted on the fence at like the beginning of the driveway, and then pointing down the driveway, we have another logo painted with like parking and an arrow for people to be able to see see kind of where the driveway is. But you know, it's not super noticeable. It's more subtle. Like we have a very minimalist logo. And I'm not. It's not gonna happen, guys. There's no red. I'm not gonna like hand paint in big thick lines like I have flowers in here. You know, the minimalist, like, you know, we're keeping it classy. It's flowers. You know, it's like it is a customer who, like, the customers appreciate the branding. You know, like people respond well to the branding that I have, even though it might not be the flashiest branding. But it doesn't matter because people pull over at my roadside stand. Not because it's flashy. People are used to pulling over at roadside stands in our area, and they pull over at mine because mine looks fancy, right? Like everyone else's roadside stand is like, you know, like a shack with like a million hand painted signs and a million flags and a million of this, and like mine stands out as distinct from the other roadside stands because it doesn't look like that. So I don't need my roadside stand to look crazy. And I was thinking about it. So when we drove down to this is something I've been thinking about, and I'm gonna put this in a video. So when we were driving down to Seattle, we went through an area that had some roadside stands, and because I'm Canadian, and so we always talk about the road, it like not being a crazy busy road. The speed limit is only 50, like, oh, the speed limit's 50 kilometers an hour. And then I realized that like a lot of like the country highways in the States are 15 miles per hour, which is 80 in CANT. It's like, you know, 80, 85, 90, like, you know, and then people are going like 90, 100 down it, which is like highway speeds. Whereas like my road is like 25, 30 is the speed limit. So my road is very much like a residential road. I don't need flags for people to know where the road is. And I also don't need people to know what a roadside stand is because everyone in the area, all my customers have already been educated about roadside stands. So, you know, I do have some weird benefits that make it so I don't necessarily have to do some of the things that other people have to do. But we do have signs that we like the stand is going to get a sign on it. We just need to order it, and we're going to get a sign that sticks out with the road. But it's not going to be massive. It's not going to be a billboard because there's rules about signage. Our city is like, doesn't want all these crazy ugly signs everywhere. They have specific sign bylaws, and we will abide by them. Someone saying you need hydrangea paniculata, like limelight, and I agree. The plan is along the bottom of the fence line at the very bottom of the property, we are going to plant with limelight and Annabelle hydrangeas eventually. That is the plan. We very much want to get some hydrangeas. You know, they'd be great for us for the dried flowers. If we can't sell them fresh. And even like we're not going to plant enough that it's going to be like, oh, we have 100 stems. But you know, if we get 20 in, you know, that's great. It's going to be another one of those things that's going to kind of diversify for us. Would you ever consider selling hanging baskets out front at the stand? So no. I would never do hanging baskets because they are too much of a theft item. So part of the reason
we did work. Come on.
What?
We did work.
You did work?
We did work. We brushed our teeth.
Okay, I'm almost done. Yeah.
For
so
actually 2 minutes.
Yeah. So we would never. Okay, you're making it so the time it doesn't go. We wouldn't put hanging baskets out the front because yeah, they're high. The price of them is very high, and then they also are like a theft item. So like the bouquets, like the thing about the stand is honestly I'm more worried about someone vandalizing my door at night. I'm more worried about like a car crashing into the stand and damaging the stand. I'm more worried about someone like figuring out how to steal my air conditioner than I am by people stealing what's actually in the stand. And we like, you know, obviously we're going to have perennial plants. Like there is value to a perennial plant. We've talked about putting some vases in the stand so people could like grab a vase if they want one. We've talked about getting some houseplants maybe for the stand, you know, and that's also like a theft item. But they're not quite as much of a theft item as the hanging baskets, right? You know, if I was going to put some houseplants in there, I'd do a few and I'd have smaller ones. I wouldn't be putting in like a $50, I wouldn't be putting in a $50 houseplant inside the roadside stand, and hanging baskets, they kind of start at $50. Like that's just what the pricing is. And they can go up to $100 for something that's really nice. You know, and it's very, 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 very hot out there. So, what most people buy is hanging baskets. I could never have on my property. Like, you know, other people have been like, oh, you should hang some baskets from the stand. And it's like, yeah, I have like geraniums. That's the only thing that'll survive in a pot out there. It literally every day, like I could go out there. I mean, it's late now, but 5 o'clock today with it being 30 here, like it's like 120. It gets so hot. Practice makes perfect. You'll get better every year. If I don't get better every year, then we have a problem. No going backwards. Only improving. So Ian's dad passed away a few months ago. But you know, it's one of those things when someone is sick, you know, when it gets to that point, you don't necessarily want things to continue for a long time at that point. So, you know, we were glad that he stayed healthy for as long as he did. And we were glad that when things were not good, that they moved forward as quickly as they did. You know, it's never a good thing. But I'm growing zinnias for the first time and they're small and blooming. Is that normal? And will they grow bigger? Yes. But if you didn't grow Bennery's Giant, then they'll never get super big. The size of your flowers is going to be determined by the variety that you grow. And so when you see the big, well, first of all, this is one thing you need to understand about what flowers look like. So here, I have this mini ukulele here, right here, head for scale, right? So this is how big this guitar is. When flower farmers take pictures of their flowers, they make their flowers look better than they actually are. So if this little tiny ukulele was my flowers and this was the picture, I would display it to you like this. I'd be like, whoa, look at how beautiful it looks, right? You know, like when you see someone holding the flowers, they're holding them like this. This is how flower farmers pose with their flowers. right? Like the arm, like when I'm doing like a armful of flowers pose, right? I'm doing this towards the camera, right? So like I'm getting my head in there, so I'm sideways, but then they're way closer. So we are all evil and tricking you with perspective.
You're not evil.
So Benry's giant zinnias are like the size of the palm of my hand at the biggest, right? And by, like that's only the first ones that are that big. After that, they're kind of like this big for me. And Benry's giant zinnias are like twice as big as other zinnias. But they do start out small, right? Like my plants, they're quite small. I deadhead for weeks before letting anything before letting anything bloom, because they also wouldn't have any stem. Hello, are you experiencing smoke-filled skies? Sounds like ulcers. Well, they checked me. They scoped me for ulcers, so it wasn't an ulcer. And there was like they checked me for like all the funguses. There was no yeast or anything. I was on I got so like I was like, I don't know, maybe it was because I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's a fungus or maybe it was a bacteria, because I was on antibiotics because I got gum surgery over the winter at one point when it got better. So I was like, I don't know, maybe the antibiotics that I took dealt with it, but then it came back. Yeah.
Oh, what?
That's why like it was like they'd check for something and it wouldn't be it, and then it'd be like, I don't know, it sounds like that. That's why I'm just like, I think it's crazy hormone stuff. So smoke. We actually are having a crazy good year for not being that badly smoked. Which is shocking with how hot and dry it's been. But we have had a few days of smoke, but most of the smoke that, like, when people are like, oh, there's so much smoke in Canada, so like that doesn't mean anything. Like I share smoke with California, Oregon, Washington, BC. Like we all share smoke. Sometimes Montana and Alberta can affect us, but so like here, this is Canada, right? And okay, here, this is Canada, this is BC, but like this is the Rocky Mountains, right? So like BC's here, and then like, you know, here's like Washington, Oregon, California. So we all have this big, huge mountain range. That's like means that when we have smoke, it kind of just like all stays. It does travel eventually, because all of the West Coast burns every year. Every bit of grass in California catches on fire, and then all the forests burn, and then all of BC burns down, and eventually we get so much smoke that the cloud billows up and gets over the Rocky Mountains and then comes towards you guys. But most of the smoke that we deal with is up and down, and the smoke that's happening right now is more like on this side of Canada, which is the reason why like everyone down here is like, oh my god, smoke, and then everyone over here is like, yeah, smoke, we told you guys. Like, we told you, like, just put your mask on. Like, we're used to it. It's been 10 years now. But yeah, we haven't had smoke yet. I probably worn like, so what I do when it's smoky out, I wear a mask. It's the first piece of farm equipment we bought when we bought our house, was we bought like good masks. That's how common smoke is here. But what I check every day.
It says not in a couple minutes.
Okay, what I check every day is the weather. I have a weather app that like is a 5-day forecast. It tells me what like I check the 24-hour. How cold was it last night? Okay, how hot did it get yesterday? What are they saying it's going to do today? And then so I check the weather, and then I open up my air quality app and I see what the air quality is. And if the air quality is above, 130 is kind of like where I like to start wearing a mask, even though that's like quite low. It's just, I know we get so much smoke that the sooner I wear a mask, the less affected I am when we're on like week 3, week 4 of the smoke. But yeah, so 130, 150, you know, on an air quality app is when I'll start wearing my mask. And we've had a few days that we're kind of like in the 150. I think we got up to like 160, 170 a few times already this year. But mostly we've actually been really lucky. But I feel for you guys, like, cause I know, and the smoke's coming.
And
Like
goodbye.
I'll be wearing a mask all August, but not yet. Ah. Let's see. Oh yeah, here someone's talking about the costochondritis. That was like the chest thing that I'm pretty sure I had. You know, but I will say, you know, like I was like I'm strong enough to do 50-pound lifts.
So you mean Daddy's coming?
But when I started being like, no, don't do 50-pound lifts. When I started doing
I've been
it,
trying
just
to
being
get
a little bit more careful about the weight.
And I need the
you know, I was just a lot less tired
said-
by the end of the day.
Good.
It was actually really good. Okay, I have to go, but there's one more thing that I was supposed to do this at the beginning. But so next week isn't going to be an open live video.
This is the last week of
yes.
school.
Yes, okay. Next week
Yay.
in the same live video time slot is
No,
when
it's
we're
not.
gonna be having the members live video. So I scheduled it. Today. So if you are a member, the way to access the members live video is you need to have the link. It's a private video so that only you guys can get onto it. And I have a community post that has the link up now. This is kind of like, if you're hearing this, go look at it. But I'll make another community post again midweek to remind everyone. But so next week we won't be doing a live video publicly for the whole channel, but we will have our members, for all of our members, come and hang out. And Wednesday is probably when the next video is going to be out. Is it a good one, Ian?
It's a good one.
It's a good one. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Sorry about the confusion for this being 2 parts. Okay, we'll see you next time.